Hello everyone. For this video, we're going to have a discussion on quantitative and qualitative data. Again, I am Ronnie M. Abson Jr., your research advisor. So now let's talk about the different objectives for this week. For this week, after going through this module, you should be able to demonstrate an understanding of interview and observation procedure skills. First, collect data through observation, interviews, and focus group discussions. Show how to record observation data in field notes. And lastly, determine the effective ways of interview and observation skills through situations. So now, let me ask you questions. How are you going to gather quantitative data or qualitative data? So before we answer these questions, may I ask you to please close your eyes and just listen on my voice. So try to remember or imagine what your grade 8 classroom looked like before. Okay? Imagine it in your mind. Do you remember the color of your trash bin, the color of your curtains, the doormat, or do you remember how many chairs were there? So, all of those things that you have remembered or imagined in your mind is a form of observation, one of the quantitative or qualitative form of gathering data. Okay, so observation. It entails the systematic description of events, behaviors, and artifacts within the social setting chosen for the study. It is a technique of gathering data using the five senses. This enables the researcher to learn things directly from his expertise and study the thing that cannot be manipulated in a laboratory setup because of ethical constraints. Of course, observation are done usually when we are conducting case studies or if those studies that we are conducting cannot be done in a laboratory. Okay, so therefore observation are usually done if we want to gather observations coming from people or coming from their experiences, their lifestyles, or any form of data that cannot be gathered through a laboratory. So here we have when we are when we are gathering data through observation, one of the best way of having it is through your field notes. So what is a field notes? Field notes refer to simple detailed notes of the researcher while conducting observation in the field. This is a written account of what the researcher has seen, experienced, felt, or thought during the actual observation. So when we say field notes, those are your notes of what you have observed during your observation. This is conducted through the use of your five senses: your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your sense of seeing, your sense of hearing, and even your sense of taste. Of course, you need to elaborately describe everything that you are going to observe during your observation, and that is through your field notes. And your field notes is generally consists of two parts. The first part is your descriptive, so in which the observer attempts to capture a word picture of the actual setting, actions, and conversations during your observation. When we say descriptive, it is what you have observed through the use of your five senses without your personal or your own idea with the observation. And the second part of your field notes is your reflective part, in which in the personality or the principles or the expressions coming from the researcher comes within. It is usually in the form of your thoughts, ideas, or questions or concerns that you are going to take down notes in your field notes. Next, so when you are having your observation, there are three ways on how you're going to have your field notes. First, we have your field jottings. It refers to quick notes on something the researcher would like to recall later. So when we said field jottings, there's are your quick notes when you have seen or observed something that makes a stimulus to you and you want to remember that stimulus by having or writing down something about that stimulus. For example, if you have observed that the community is very solemn or it is very quiet and it keeps you or it states a stimulus for you and you want to remember that kind of stimulus later on, you are going to have an special notes, and that is your field jottings. Next, we have your field diary. It refers to the personal statement of the researcher's thoughts, feelings, or questions or opinions on others whom he has a close encounter with during the study. So your field study is not all about the five senses, but it is more on your personal ideas, more on your personal thoughts on the things that you are observing. This is more on your personal observations rather than your descriptive observations. Okay? Next, we have your field logs. Field logs refers to the schedule of your daily activities while conducting an interview or observation. So when we say field logs, these are your plans of what you need or what you needs to be or what you need to be observed during this time. So field log is usually your schedule. For example, exactly 10:30, you should be observing this kind of situation already. At this time, 11 o'clock, you're already observing this kind of situation. So field log is more of a plan or schedule rather than an observation. Okay, next. So those three, if you are a thorough researcher conducting an observation, the three will help you to have a very descriptive and very reliable and valid observation. So how can a researcher maintain integrity and honesty when he is conducting this kind of data gathering? It is by taking into consideration the problems of observer effect and observer bias. So what is an observer effect and what is an observer bias? Observer effect is also known as your research effect or reactivity or Hawthorne effect. And this is an effect wherein people will act differently if they know they are being observed. Of course, a lot of us can relate to this that if you know that someone is taking an observation of you, your positive attitude, your positive actions, principles, and ideas will come out and you are going to perform as positive as you can because you know that you are being observed. So therefore, if the researcher will not take this into consideration, the observer effect, his or her observation will not be valid because the one being observed knows that he is being observed. So therefore, positive and not realistic observation will be recorded by the researcher. The actual situation will not be shown because the one being observed will uh, change the way he or she acts normally because she knows that she is being observed. That's why a researcher must take into considerations the observer effect. Next, we have also what we call observer bias. It is also called experimenter bias or research bias. Refers to the possibility that certain characteristics or ideas of the researcher may affect what they observe. Ibig sabihin, the researcher could uh, influence the way he or she describe or take down notes on his or her observation. Because sometimes the principles, ideas, thoughts, or experiences of the researcher may affect the result of his or her observation because of this observer bias. Okay, so next we have so let me give an example of this observer bias. So therefore, for example, you are living in a community that crime is ordinary, that crime is a part of your community. Then therefore, if you have undergone an observation through the same community, you cannot tell or you will not show in your observation that the community has a lot of crimes. Because for you, it is a normal thing for the community. While in comparison to a person who is not living to a community wherein crime is minimal, therefore, if he observed that kind of community where crime or crime is a normal thing, so therefore he will take down notes that this community has a lot of crime. So therefore, with that, your observation and his observation will be different from each other, and that is an example of an observer bias. Next, what are the steps within the method of observing? First, we have to choose the research site. Okay, it's very important to choose the research site where you are going to conduct your observation because the observation site should be accessible not only to you but also to the one you are observing. It should be a place or a site wherein your observation will not be easily recognized, or the people you are observing will not know that they are being observed. Okay. Next, we have develop observational protocol. When you are conducting an observation, you should have a technique on how you are going to have your observation. So through that, you could or you should first get a letter of consent from the authorities governing the site where you are going to conduct your observation, so that you will not look suspicious when you are already going through your observation. For example, if you're observing a community and you have the permission coming from the barangay, and the barangay captain and the barangay kagawad knows that you are observing their community, of course, when you roam around the community, you will not look suspicious for the authorities. Okay? And they will let you observe your community. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the barangay authorities knows that you're observing the community. It necessarily that everyone will know that you're observing them. So make sure that when you're observing the community and the barangay authorities knows, or barangay authority knows that you are observing their community, the people will not know that they are being observed, because of course we will again have your uh, observation bias. Next, we have focus the observation. Of course, when we are already in the site where we are going to have your observation, there will be a lot of things that we could observe. But of course, we need to have a focus on the things that we need to observe. Okay? Things that will assist you to understand your analysis questions. Means to say that you need to focus on the problems or questions that you need to answer. Okay? Observe only the things that is within your scope of your research. Next, we have confirm your role. What is going to be your role as a researcher? Are you a participant observer or a non-participant observer? So what is the difference between the two? When we say participant observer, you are within the situation of the one you are observing. For example, if you are observing the lifestyle of teenage pregnant moms, you are going to live in in the community that is within your subject, or where your subject is living with. So, for example, if they are living in a certain barangay, you need to also live within that barangay if you are a participant observer. But if you are a non-participant observer, you could watch them through the CCTV of your barangay, or you could let the barangay authority install a CCTV on their surrounding of the house where those teenage moms are living without them knowing that they are being observed. So by that, you are a non-participant observer. Fifth, we have record field notes. So when we are recording field notes, we have talked that a while ago about your record notes and your observation notes, your field notes through your jotting, through your field diary, or through your field logs. Next, we have slowly withdraw. After the observation is done, slowly withdraw by thanking the participants for their time. That if you are a participant observer. But if you are not a but if you are a non-participant observer, that is not necessarily be done. Okay? Now let's move on your interview. Of course, what is an interview? It is defined as an oral communication between two or a lot of individuals where the interviewer asks questions to gather specific information from the interviewee. It is used to collect information from a little cluster of subjects on a broad variety of topics. But usually, when we are conducting interview, it is a one-on-one question and answer wherein the interviewer asks questions to the interviewee to gather his or her personal experiences, thoughts, and ideas about the questions. So there are four types of interview that we could do. First, it is a structured one. It is where the researcher prepares a selected set of questions and strictly follow those questions that is being prepared by the researcher. So therefore, follow-up questions are not meant to be used in a structured form of interview. Next, we have a semi-structured one. This is where the researcher sets the outline for the topics covered and prepares principally open-ended questions so that follow-up questions can be done during the interview. It is more of, sabihin natin ng, it can be more of, or you could gain more deeper answers when you are having your semi-structured because it allows you to have a follow-up questions from a question. So therefore, deeper answers could be get from the one being interviewed. Next, we have the informal. This is less formal than structured or semi-structured interview because when you are having your informal interview, it is as if you are just talking or having a conversation with the one you are interviewing without a set of questions or without a prepared set of questions. You just ask questions that comes up within your conversations. And the last type of interview, we have the retro retrospective. It may be structured or semi-structured or informal, but when you are conducting a retrospective interview, it tries to urge respondents to recall. So it will reconstruct from memory something that is going on within the past. So when we say retrospective, it is a combination of the three forms of interview wherein your main goal for this type of interview is for the interviewee to recall his past experiences, his past observations, his past thoughts and feelings, and tell it to you, the observer or the interviewer, so that you not necessarily data or the necessary data that you need in your research can be gathered. Okay? Next, steps in conducting an interview. First, of course, decide whether interviews are applicable. Is the conduct of an interview the most appropriate collection of data for your research? If yes, then select the type of interview. It is a formal, a structured, or a semi-structured, or a retrospective one. Then third, invite the participants by having a formal letter to them or by going to the place where they live for a convenient way of interviewing them. Make sure that when you are inviting the participants for an interview, you are going to interview them to the place where secrecy could be have or you could have secrecy in the place where you are going to conduct your interview, and of course in a place where your interviewee will be also what do you mean by this relaxed and they are comfortable with. Next, we have develop an interview protocol. Develop a technique on how you can uh, gather all of the necessary data that you need coming from the interview. And of course, you need to take in consideration ethical considerations, of course, by not harming or asking questions that is harmful or rude to your interviewee. Okay? Huwag po kayong mamilit sa mga interviewee ninyo na sabihin nila yung mga bagay na ayaw po nila. But rather, create tricky questions that uh, if you ask them, they will not di nila mapapansin that you are already asking them of a critical question. Next, we have prepare the audio equipment. Equipment, of course, it's very important because you cannot take down notes all of their answers. So, of course, you need to record the conversation between you and the interviewee. Okay, so next we have also it's very important to prepare a good audio equipment because later on when you are already deciphering your interview, you could listen again and again to the audio or the audio recording of your interview and get more of your interview. Okay, next, organize for a quiet setting for the interview. Of course, it could be quiet place or in their homes or in your home, or it could be in a coffee shop. Just make sure that the place or setting of your interview is a quiet, comfortable one. And then conduct the interview. Then after having the interview, you need to have a follow-up after the interview. Okay? So, hindi yung basta nag-interview ka, then right after that, wala nang follow-up dun sa interview mo. Of course, you need to connect with them again and again. Next, we have the third way on how we can gather qualitative data, and that is your focus group discussion. Focus group discussion refers to a free-flowing discussion with a little cluster of 6 to 10 individuals to generate different concepts and opinions on certain issues moderated by a skilled facilitator. A focus group is not a debate or a session that resolves conflict or a problem. Instead, it is a chance to achieve insights from the participants on certain topics. So, therefore, when we talk about focus group discussion, it is as if a brainstorming wherein the facilitator will ask questions and all of the participants will share his or her own idea about the question so that ideas coming from them can be recorded by the one conducting the focus group discussion. Okay? An important component of the focus group discussion is the set of questions asked by the facilitator. Of course, because the group discussion will revolve around the questions that will be asked by the facilitator. Of course, the questions are also very important because it should be questions that will let the group discuss their ideas on the certain topic that you want to be discussed by the participants. So focus group discussion, we have three examples here. We have, or you could have these three type of questions, or you should have these three type of questions when you are having your focus group discussion. First, we have your engagement questions. So we have here the participants, the topic, and set tone for the discussion. Example, what is the interest of the participants? So here in the engagement questions, you need to ask questions that will engage the interest of the participants to participant or to participate within the discussion and will invigorate them to share more about the topic. Next, we have exploratory. It is getting the insight of the participants on the topic. These questions probe some of the issues given by the participants. So therefore, exploratory questions are follow-up questions about the things they have said on the engagement questions. So example here is why that is their interest. So after asking on the engagement question, what is their interest, follow-up questions for exploratory question is why that is their interest. With that, the participants will continuously explains and give or share his or own observations, ideas, principles, and thoughts. Then we have exit questions. These are given to make sure everything are covered up and nothing is missed in the discussion. So example is, why do you think that is interesting to you and other people? Exit questions are concluding statements or concluding questions that will sum up all of the things that is being discussed by the group, and of course, letting the participants to give all of their given thoughts on the discussion or on the topic being discussed. So that's all for this video. We have here, I will end with a quotation. Knowing the answers will help you in school, but knowing how to question will help you in life. That is by Warren Berger. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Uh, Jules Mark Garcia for preparing the PowerPoint presentation for this video. Okay, so that's all for our video. Again, I am your research advisor, Ronnie M. Absalon Jr. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell button so that you will be notified once I release new videos on this channel. Thank you so much. Again, I am Ronnie M. Absalon Jr. saying goodbye. Thank you.